Hello, everybody. Hope everybody's having a fantastic day. Welcome to another episode of Crafting with Christina. So today we are making this adorable little bunny card. We're doing watercolor today. I just love this sentiment. I will always take the best care of your heart. Isn't that the cutest thing ever? So we are going to be making this card today. So what we're using is, I'll hold this up so hopefully there's not too much of a glare on it. It's by MFT and it's called Wish You Were Hair. Haha, cute. So it is a stamp and a die set. We're not actually going to be using the die today. I'm only using the stamp set today, but it has some very cute sentiments and everything on there as well. So you've got your little bunny along with little hearts and some very cute sentiments on here. So as I said, we're going to be doing a watercolor card today. So here's a couple things that you're going to need. Again, we're doing a standard A2 card size. So it's 4.25 by 5.5. You're going to need some score tape or liquid glue, and that's just to attach your card to your card base. For the card base, standard, what we use every single time is the 110-pound Nina white cardstock. So it comes in the 8.5 by 11 sheet. So you're going to cut that in half, which is going to give you 2 card bases. And then all you're going to do is take your half, you're going to fold it, you're going to use your bone folder, and now you've got yourself a card base. So that you can get started on right away and put that aside because you're not going to need this till the very end. What you are going to need is either some watercolor paper, or you can use the Vicki Boutin foundation paper. So if you have this as well, because it's mixed media paper, you can do watercoloring, inking. This is just kind of a anything type of paper. It's really nice and thick. If you choose to use that, you can do that. Otherwise, if you have watercolor paper, I'm using the watercolor paper today. I kind of go between one or the other, but I'm just using your basic just watercolor paper today. So what you're going to need to do for that is either use, as I said, in most of mine, I use the Lawn Fawn large stitched rectangles because that's going to give you that piece that's 4 1/4 by 5 1/2. Otherwise, you're going to want to cut your piece of watercolor or foundations paper, whatever you're using, to that size because we're putting everything on this sheet of paper here. You're also going to need some black ink just to do the inking of this, but you have to make sure that it is waterproof ink. So I always use the Lawn Fawn Jet Black because I always use it because it's alcohol marker friendly. But if you read on the back as well too, it's waterproof. So you have to make sure whatever ink you're going to be using today, that it is waterproof because you're going to be going around it and over top of it with your watercolors. So you're going to need a paintbrush and some water if you choose to use that. And if you don't want to, you can still use your water brush. Again, it really doesn't matter, whatever you want to do. You're going to need some masking paper today. I'm going to show you what we're going to do, something a little different. So you're just going to use, I have the Inkadinkadoo masking paper. But any of the masking paper will do. It really doesn't matter. I have a couple different kinds. This is just the one that I grabbed. So you're going to have to make sure you have some masking paper, and you'll see why. You're going to need your MISTI tool just to stamp it. And I forgot that you're also going to need either a glass mat, or if you have, I'm going to be using my glass mat, but even if you have like your craft mat, I know a lot of people buy these and they split them in half, but I've always kept mine big. Mine was very well used until I got my glass mat. But you're going to need either your craft mat or your glass mat or something, because you're going to be taking your oxides and you're going to be sliding them along to be able to pick that up to use as watercolor. So if you don't have either of these, grab like wax paper or parchment paper or something, because you don't want to put that ink and just kind of make a big mess onto your regular tabletop or into your regular mat. So that's probably the best thing to do. And then you're going to grab some, I'm using Distress Oxides. Typically when I do a lot of my watercoloring, I do like to use the Stamp Market. I do have their watercolor palette, but I'm going to show you how to do it with Distress Oxides today. So I'm going to be using the new one. I haven't actually put the name down on there, but I'm using the new color, the Salvage Patina. And then I'm using Carved Pumpkin, mustard seed, and the newest pink, which is the Kitsch Flamingo. So those are the 4 colors we're going to be using. So if you need to pause it right now, go for it and get all your little pieces ready, because this is everything you're going to need today to make the start to finish card. So let's get started. I'm going to put that off to the side. First things first, I'm going to move all this over. First thing you're going to need is, as I said, make sure you cut your piece down here. Cut your piece of paper with either your watercolor or your foundations paper. And now you're going to want to grab your MFT or whatever stamping tool you're using. I just use the MFT. And you're going to put your piece of paper in there, and now you're just going to grab your little bunny. I'm going to do the sentiment at the end, but you can do it, doesn't really matter. So now we're going to grab the little bunny here. Now you're going to put him down. I kind of centered him, but put a little bit closer to the top because I still want my sentiment across the bottom. So you're just going to put your little bunny, we're going to put him right about there. And you want to close this up. If you're using your stitching, make sure you just have it the right way so that the pretty part of the stitching is facing up. So now you're going to grab your Lawn Fawn or whatever waterproof ink you have. Okay. Now you're going to put your bunny down here. I'm going to stamp them twice just so that I know that it's nice and dark. Okay. Now you're going to take that out. And you're going to set that aside for a second, because now that you have your bunny out, this is now is when you want to buy your get your masking paper. So this is basically what we're going to do with it. But I am going to cut them out just to show you. So I never throw any of my masking paper away. You never know if you're just going to need little pieces, but we're going to grab a new sheet today. So as you can see, you're not going to put it on the back of this. It's very shiny. You need to put it on the actual paper part. So you're going to put this down here. I'm going to move the bunny down. I didn't bother wiping it off or anything like that, because this does not matter if it's dark or if it's light. You just want to have just enough so that you can see where you have to cut them out. Okay. So you don't need to stamp this twice, because it's just basically just need to see the outside edge so you know where you're going to be cutting him out. So now I'm going to take my chamois, clean my stamp off here. And again, apologies if I'm shaking the stand. It's hard to do without it. Now you're just going to put your stamp off to the side because you're finished with that for now. Now you're going to put your MFT aside because you're done with that for now. So the next thing you need to do is you need to grab your scissors. If you're like, I know there's a die that you can do with it, but you don't want to do the die, because when you do the die piece out, it's going to give you that nice little white edge around. That's normally what you want when you're going to be doing a stamp and die and you're going to be putting on a card or something. But this, you want it to be right against that black edge, so that the watercolor, when you're doing that, is going to come right on there. Now you can see they have little squiggles here and here and here. I don't even bother with that. So I'm going to make sure I'm in frame here. Because that part isn't going to be colored anyways. It's not a big deal. So I like to, when I do mine, I go perfectly right along the black. I don't want to have a little white edge, because then you're not going to be, you're not going to have that. So you want to make sure that you cut right along, even kind of do as close as you can to the center of that black line. Just so that you know, even if you're doing it on the inside, it's fine too. You just got to make sure that you go as close to that black line edge as possible and not too far that way or in this way. Otherwise, you're going to have your bunny multicolored, which maybe you want multicolored. When I get to here, I like to just start cutting some of this off because it's just too much of a pain to have all that excess stuff. So we're going to go around here. We're going to do that little part of his hair because I don't want his hair to be multicolored. Okay, go around the edge. And then same thing when you get to that little spiral down around his ear. Just don't worry about trying to get around that. Just cut it right off. because that's just black ink anyways, and that's already going to be on your piece. So it's not a big deal. Okay. Again, cut that little spiral piece off. You're good with that. Cut out their little feet. Okay, so now you can just get rid of that part there. So now what you want to do is you want to bring the piece back that you already stamped onto your watercolor page. Now, this masking stuff, all you got to do is just peel it off the backing piece. And if I hadn't broken all my nails, this would be a whole lot easier. I should just grab my tweezers. So now you're going to peel this piece off. Now, if you want to reuse this, you can keep this and you can put your bunny back on there, and you can still reuse this piece. That's why I kept this one, just to kind of show you. Mine curled up a little bit because I actually used the heat gun on it, which you might want to do as well too. And then it's a little bit harder to reuse because it doesn't stick very well once you put the heat gun on it. So now all you want to do is you want to put your bunny right back right on top of the stamp. So you just got to make sure. This is a lot harder to do when I can't stick my head right on top of my stamp. Okay, he's down there, he's down there. And just make sure you press good because you're going to be adding water to this now. And you want to make sure that your stamp, your sticky part, is all the way down. So now you've got your little bunny, and now you don't have to worry about him. So next thing you want to do is either grab your, as I said, I'm going to use the glass mat. But if you want to, if you're going to use your craft paper, or if you have like parchment or wax or something, that works totally fine too. So now you can either grab your water pen or whatever you want to use. I'm actually going to be using regular water and a paintbrush just because I wanted a bit of a bigger brush. My water brushes are all small, which I mean, you can do and move around and stuff too, but I just like having a little bit of a bigger brush. So you're just going to choose whatever color you want to start with. I'm going to start with a Selvage Patina. And all you're going to do, this is why I said you don't want to do this on your regular mat. You want to have something that's easy to clean, because you're basically going to take this and just smush it onto either your craft mat or your glass mat, whatever you're using. You're going to just smush it onto there. So what I like to do when I watercolor, the more water you add, the more it's going to flow and give it a really nice look. So I actually I'm just going to grab a bunch. I'm not even going to wipe it out. I'm just going to pile on the water onto the top here. And then you're just going to pick up your color. You see when you drop it, if you add enough water, it moves. So this is what I like about watercolor, right? So you can move it around here. And if you want it to be really, really light, then don't add any more ink and you're going to have a very light piece. See, and it just moves around. If you want it to be a little bit darker, just start adding a little bit more. And this is what's nice. This is when you know you have enough water, when it starts to move like this. Right? I love watching it. I love watching it move. And now I do want this to go right up to the bunny because I want that outline to be there. Okay. So I'm just going to let it sit there. Now, if you're worried about it, you can right now, if you want to take your heat gun to it, go for it. I like to leave it a little bit wet because I like the way that it dries. And then because there's already water here, when I start getting into the next color, this color will actually drip into there. But if you don't want it to do that, you can take your heat gun to it right now. Now you're going to need it this color a little bit later on, but for now, I would just grab a baby wipe or a paper towel. You can clean it off a little bit with a paper towel as well too, just for now. So let's go into, if we copy the card, we're going to go into pink next. So I'm going to use the new Kitsch Flamingo. Put a little bit down on your card there. And again, I usually like to add that little bit of water first. And you can always add more water to it. So start with a little bit, see what you think. And if you want to add more, then you add more. Just start putting your colors along here. And then you can see that it's still moving around. But I don't think it's moving around enough. So all you have to do is just add more water. The more water you add, the more the color moves. So I know that I want it to be against the bunny. And I'm just going to pull it out. Now you can use your paintbrush to pull it out as much as you want. And if you want the blue to go into the pink, just start mixing them up a little bit. So I think I'm just going to leave it like that. And the next color, let's just first of all get rid of the pink. And we're going to go into yellow. So I'm going to do mustard seed. Put a little, squeeze a little bit of that. And then you're just going to add a little bit more water. I'm doing this a little bit lighter than the one that I typically did, just to kind of give you the idea that you can do lighter or you can get into heavier colors when you start adding more of the ink to it when you're playing around with it. So you can see you've had enough color. I love this part when you just start and everything just moves around. So you can kind of move it. It's going into the pink a little bit. Just make sure it's touching the bunny's edge. Right? So now you've got this moving around, and I think I want just a little bit up there. And if you, that's the nice part about using your, you can go and just kind of mush it down and it'll go down. But if you actually use your paintbrush, you can kind of move it to wherever you want. And just so you know that, like, when you do this, no two pieces are ever going to be looking the same. I like that with a little bit of yellow going into that pink there. So every time you do watercolor, it's always going to be different. You never really know what you're going to find. Okay, so the last color we're going to do is carved pumpkin. Smush a little bit down there on that. And then add some water onto your paper first. If you don't add the water onto the paper first, it's going just to be a very vibrant orange. You can still keep adding, but it's just fun to have the water down first so that you can watch it move. And I can see that that's not going to already be enough water. See, as soon as I drop that down, you can see things are going to start to move again. So move it around into the colors if you want, as much as you want to play around with this. Then you can grab it, make sure it's all the way up to the bunny. And I like that look. So you've got just a big pile of orange and then a little bit less on the sides here. I can see that it's not right into him over here. And I also have a hair. Okay, so that's gone. Now what I'm going to do next is I'm actually, because it's still wet and I want to keep working on it, you can set it aside to dry, or you can just take your heat gun. And then you're just going to kind of go around and just dry it. You can actually push your heat gun and push the colors around. But as I said, just know, like, you can see that the masking the tape is starting to curl up when I put the heat gun on it. And that's fine, because it's going to be pulled off in a few minutes anyways. Oh, this is turning out beautifully. I just want to get it dry, and then we're going to do some splattering, and then we're going to pull the bunny off so you can see. As I said, you can just let this sit and dry, and it'll dry very similar to this, but just for time's sake, I like to use my heat gun. Okay, so next thing we're going to do, and you're going to start pulling off the bunny, but not quite yet. So I'm actually just going to grab my water brush, because I just like the tip when I'm doing the splattering. If you can see you doing the splattering on this. So you already have the orange out. Keep the orange, just squeeze so that you have some water in there. Oh, I still had some dark colors from in there before. Okay, squeeze out here. And then all you're going to do is just tap along, and as much as you want or as little as you want of the orange. Okay, that's all I want for the orange. Take your baby wipe, pull that aside, clean off your water brush, and then grab, we'll go pink next. Actually, you know what? I'm going to do pink last, because I want to do that for his ears and stuff as well. So just, and again, you're not going to need a lot, so just put a tiny little bit down on here. Okay, add a little bit of water to it. Just squeeze the water out so that it mixes up nice. And then you're just gonna make sure your card and everything is off just in case you go a little crazy on it. And you're just gonna tap. And you're just gonna tap some more blue, just a little bit of blue on there. There. You know that if it's not tapping well, add more water because then it'll make it a lot easier. Okay, so that color is done. Okay, now we're gonna do, we did orange, we did blue. Now we want a little bit of yellow. And you don't have to use all 4 colors, but if you choose to, go for it. Again, squeeze a little bit of water so it gets nice and runny. Then just tap a little bit of yellow on there. If you need more, just keep going back and adding more. Okay, that looks good. And then last color you're gonna go in is with your pink. I add a little bit more because now we're also going to be watercoloring the center of the bunny here. Okay, so you're just going to grab, well, I still have some yellow on there, but that's all right. Grab the pink. Now you're just going to splatter some pink around in here. And this is why you wanted to have the other watercolors dry, because if it's wet and you're going to be adding wet, it's just going to kind of smear into that. So you want to make sure that this is dry before you start doing your splattering. So it's basically layering this on top of your other layer. Okay, I think that looks perfect. Actually, keep your water brush out here. Just going to make sure that it doesn't have any more of that yellow on there. So it's nice and clean. So I am going to clean because I didn't clean it in between. So I had a nice pile of the yellow on there as well too. Okay, so add a little bit more. So now the fun part, you're going to take off your mask, your bunny masking. Right? So now when you pull that off, you still have your white bunny underneath, and it's still just a 1 layer. I mean, you could do this whole background here and then, you know, cut out the bunny with the die cut and stuff as well too. But I just thought I'd show you how to do the masking if you just want to keep it a single layer. So now what you're going to do is you're going to, again, add a little bit more water to your pink. And now you're just going to use your brush, and you're going to color in the heart. I just left the other bunny white. I only colored in the little bit of the heart. And then you can also do like some shading and stuff with this as well too. So do you see how here I didn't add any water, but I picked up a lot more of the dark pink and added it to the bottom of the heart and around the side. So now you can see this side of the heart is a little bit darker than this side. And I just like to do his little nose and then get in and do his ears. Her ears, his ears, whoever's ears. So now there's not much left. You just got to make sure that's nice and dry. Some of my orange splatters were a little bit bigger than the rest so that I can see that it's still a little bit wet. But because we want to start doing a couple more inks, like doing the sentiments and the hearts and stuff on top of that. Now you want to, actually, now that I'm thinking about it, I do want to put a little bit, you can see on this one, he almost looks like he's floating. So on this one, I added a little bit of dark color. Let's just grab, because we have jet black here. Let's just add a little bit of that to the bottom of them. So again, just squeeze some water just to make it kind of a darker gray. And then you're just going to kind of just go along the bottom here underneath them. Right? And then just kind of extend it out a little bit on the sides here, just to make him kind of look like he's sitting on some sort of ground and not just floating in the middle of somewhere. There. So now at least he looks like he's actually supposed to be sitting there. So you can clean this off. And now, as I said, most of it's dry, but you want to make sure that it is dry. So if you want to grab again, just kind of quickly go over it a little bit. I can see a few spots that are wet. So you just want to go over it a little bit with your heat gun, just to make sure everything's dried. Now that looks good. you can see that there's no more, anyways, you probably can't, but I can see that there's no more wet spots. But now, do you see what I'm talking about? When you're going in using them different colors, like this one, I kind of faded into, these ones I think I used just, again, I think I used Selvage Patina, but it's looking different on this one. But this one, I kind of mixed the colors together a little bit more than I did in this. So you play around with it. Every single watercolor is always going to be different. That's what I love about watercolor. It's fun. It's something fun to play with because you really never know what you're going to come up with. Now I am definitely going to have to clean my glass mat after, but for now I'm just going to put it away because all you have left now is to grab your Misty. Okay. And you're going to grab back. And so now you're going to put whatever sentiment you want on the bottom here. Because now the bunny, everything else is done. You're going to grab your sentiment here. And you can too, I did this one, always take the best care. Let's do something different. You know, what does it say? You know just how to hold my heart. I wish you were hair. And then I love you so very much. You know what? I'm going to do I love you so very much just to make it a little bit different. So I'm actually going to move this down, because I'm going to put the sentiment along the bottom here. Oops, sticking to my fingers. And then I'm going to use my second one here because now at the same time, do you see these little hearts? There's little hearts underneath the bunny. And those actually fit right in between. So the ones that are closest to them, basically right kind of in between their neck. So this, it's so cute. If it would stop sticking to my fingers. Okay, there we go. So now I know my paper is not going to move. It's held down by 2 magnets, so I should be fine. Now I'm going to go in with my jet black. And again, this isn't as big of a deal if you want to use a different black or a different color. It doesn't matter because you've done your watercoloring now. So now if you choose to do this in pinks or whatever, you can use any color that you want. I'm just using black because it's here. Okay, so now you're just gonna make sure these are pushed down nice. I'm gonna do them one more time just because I want it to be nice and dark. Okay, and clean these guys off, but I'll put them away in a second. I think these are so cute. Look at these little hearts that are coming out behind it. And that's why I didn't want to mask any of those, because I like the hearts showing up in the same colors as your watercolor. Now, isn't that just a gorgeous way just to do just a plain flat card without actually using the die? But if you mask them out, do you see how much water was on there? And it still didn't even get underneath to go to the bunny. So that's why I really like using the masking paper. I think it's just super fun. So now what you want to do, and I already did it on the back, you want to either add glue or score tape. I always use score tape because I don't want my cards to fall apart. And I know that score tape is not moving. So I'm going to grab my tweezers. Just put this off to the side for now. And then you're going to grab your card base. Okay, and just make sure that you're doing it the right way. And same thing as I do every single time, I just kind of put it down into the top and hold it there so that I know it's on the right spot. And then you can still move this around. So again, move it until you know you're in the right spot there. And then all you got to do is push it over and push it down with your score tape. And now you are attached to your card base and it's not going anywhere. So now you are finished your little bunny card. So hopefully you guys learned a little bit about watercoloring and masking and stuff, and have a blast with it. It is definitely a lot of fun, and you can mix around, play around, mix around with colors, have fun with it. That's the only thing with watercoloring. It's never going to be the same, so don't ever try to copy your project from before because you will never do it the same way again twice. Anyways, have a wonderful rest of your day, and we'll see you next time.